My name is Wade Brackenberry. I'm a doctor of chiropractic. I'm the first chiropractor in Vietnam. I started chiropractic and created the laws for chiropractic 16 years ago. I grew up in rural Idaho, and I started climbing in the sawtooth at 13 years old. And I started climbing with homemade equipment and climbing very easy mountains that I can walk up now, but were very adventurous back then. And at 13, my parents took me to the Tetons and introduced me to a climbing guide, and I became his climbing partner for a summer. Now general mountaineering and then evolved backwards. So at 12 years old, I read Freedom of the Hills, and I started climbing large mountains that had snow and ice and rock on them, generally very easy routes with very easy rock climbing and very easy snow and ice climbing. And then gradually got interested in pure rock climbing, trad climbing, and it wasn't until I was in my probably 40s that I started doing some bolted climbing. Bolted climbing. And I do a little bouldering. We always bouldered as an exercise, but I've only started doing a little bit of bouldering as a sport. And of course, somebody as big as me and as old as me, it's quite a hard introduction. I grew up in a world where rodeos and football and basketball were the most important thing in the world, and my father was a coach. And I actually, by the time I was about 13 or 14, I hated sports because I wasn't particularly well endowed in sports. And so I turned to climbing because it was I found it very adventurous. There was this tremendous sense of adventure and a very much no sense of competition. And so I could go up and climb a mountain by myself, and it would be a little bit dangerous, really a lot of uncertainty to the outcome. Would I make it to the top? Would I not? Which is the very definition of adventure. And at the end of the day, I really would enjoy it, and nobody knew anything about it. So I think that, I really had a strong need for adventure, which took me all over the world climbing mountains. Secondly, I think that climbing, especially climbing mountains and rock climbing, you're in a place that your mind and the evolution of human beings tells you have no place in being. And at a certain point when you're climbing, you get good at it, and you can climb up something very steep and very frightening and feel peaceful. And there's some sort of feeling of audaciousness about that. I don't know any other word for it. I've not really come to a conclusion about it, but other climbers talk about the same thing. Yeah, I climbed a number of mountains in the Himalayas. I did a number of first ascents in China, usually around 6,000 meters. I did a first ascent of the second highest mountain in Burma about nearly 20 years ago. And I climbed quite a lot in New Zealand. I did one full season in New Zealand, and climbed quite a lot in Mexico on the volcanoes. I used to guide the Mexican volcanoes. And just a ton of climbs in the Tetons and the Sawtooths. I've done all the Grand Teton and all the mountains in the Grand Teton Range a number of times. Originally, when I was growing up, climbing fit people who were sort of misfits and people who didn't fit into other aspects of society, especially in America. Mm-hmm. Climbing took a hold in France and Europe a generation or two before it did in America. But when I grew up, it was a lot of people who were just gentle friends of Jesus with long hair who smoked marijuana and did something that nobody else really understood. Nowadays, climbing has evolved into many facets. Mm-hmm. And so there's people who are world-class athletes who are extreme public figures, like Alex Honnold and these people solo stuff that I could never have climbed my entire life. I trained my entire life. And then you have bouldering, which has become its own sport. And you have rock climbing, sport climbing, which is extremely safe and is a lot like playing checkers with your body. So I think nowadays climbing fits a wide variety of people in mainstream people of different types, So climbing is a sport that fits into sports like yoga. It's very similar to, say, yoga or Pilates or even people that do mountain biking. There's certain types of climbing that very few people could ever do without getting hurt. And actually, I'm looking into using climbing as rehabilitating people who have spinal injuries and people who are paralyzed from strokes. And there's been some research in that direction. So virtually anybody that can do yoga or can do any kind of just real gentle sport can climb at some level and probably benefit tremendously from it, probably enjoy it a lot. And then, but not everybody can climb very difficult routes, and not everybody should. So I think that it's a sport that like dance, like yoga, like figure skating, practically anybody can do it at some level and really enjoy it. But I think there's not a lot of restriction to, it's not a sport like, I'm trying to think of it, like say base jumping, which would only fit a certain type of person. and would be even dangerous for that person. Well, I would do what wasn't really available to me. I would go to an indoor climbing gym and take a course and learn it under entirely safe conditions. And then, just build up gradually. If they want to climb a few meters up and climb down again the first time, that's fine. If they want to, if they're somebody who's really gung-ho and wants to climb through the top of something, that's fine as well. But I think I would start it, there's so much instruction available now, and there's such a systematic way of starting now. In fact, even today, I talked to Paul, and I learned a whole bunch of new things about, like, hangs and things for, not having injury that I didn't even know before. And so I think that the best would be to just go to a climbing gym, take a course, get some friends, and go gradually with something you like.